the side, ref.
In from the Side is back with another episode. Welcome back to my co-host and partner in crime, Matthew Rhodes, a guy who swore on Saturday he saw A.D. Jacobs in the crowd, and we figured out it was Ashwell Prince at the cricket.
That was 100% correct. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, lucky in you, Matt.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Recovered from the weekend?
It was a big weekend. It was, obviously, your man's just mentioned we went to go and watch the Proteas win. I think South Africa's first ICC trophy ever. Anyway, we're there on the fourth day. It was a beautiful sunny day in London. 8 of us boys trucked down copious amounts of beers, and we watched the winning runs getting hit. So it was a good day out, and then obviously followed by Father's Day on Sunday, and it was my first Father's Day. So it was a lot to celebrate, a lot to get amongst.
Yeah, we can't celebrate the Bulls, so we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, congrats to Leinster. It was a tough watch, but they were deserving winners in front of their home crowd.
Yeah, that wasn't a great spectacle, but we'll move on swiftly and let's get back into this Mount Rushmore series, Matt. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been doing the series, and it's been getting a lot of good traction, and we got a lot of feedback from the guys out there in YouTube land. We're in the loose forwards, and as we said last week, we're trying to split and differentiate the flanker position between open side and blind side. You'll get a mishmash of both positions in both videos. We're doing this as a two-part series. I think in both our lists, if I had a look at it, I think we've got more open sides. If we look at the top 8, I don't know who you picked, who your second 4 is going to be, but I think let's just get straight back into it, Matt. I think usually I ask you to go first, but given where we ended last week, I need to go first.
You can crack on, and to add a little bit more flavour to what he just said, there's going to be some 6s in the 7s, and there were some 7s in our 6s, I'm sure. With so many people being so versatile in this flank position, being able to play both sides of the scrum, we've tried to be last week, focusing on number 7s. With South Africa, traditionally the open side is a number 6 anyway, so that threw another kettle of confusion into the mix. But I think we're trying this week to remain blindside, and we'll see how we go.
Yeah, let's see how we go. And by the way, if you hear any sort of background noise, we've got the fan on because it is boiling in Bedford. It really is quite hot, and we've got spotlights on us. So if you get any background noise, apologies, but otherwise we're going to faint here in the studio.
You wouldn't normally hear two Safa boys complaining about the heat in the UK, but it's turned it up, and it's a bit muggy and a bit warm today. So anyway, let's crack on.
Let's talk some rugby. We've got some brandy to keep us cool. So first one on my list for... Speaking of, I have to go first this week because last week you ended with George Smith, and he was also part of my selection. I just didn't get to him last week. So he's the first name on my Mount Rushmore for this week.
Nice.
He's an open side. Again, we're saying we're going to try and stick to blindside as much as possible. I had a couple of guys last week that could play both sides of the scrum, and the same this week. But George Smith, like you said last week,
can't leave him out.
Has to be up there. I think he's the greatest flanker that Australia has ever produced.
Yeah.
Just like a menace over the ball. We spent a lot of time talking about Richie McCaw. I think George Smith, when it comes to like jackling capability, turning over ball, he's right up there. He's one of the best ever. And I saw a lot of the comments that folks left in the comments section, and I tend to agree with him. He had a better skill set than guys like Pocock and Hooper. I think he was more of a complete player. Great defensively, great on attack, strong ball carrier. Always, he never took a step back in the contact point. But again, I think he'll be known for his ability. He was one of the first flankers. I mean, jackling wasn't really an ability anyone had to have in the amateur days. When rugby turned pro, he was one of the guys that really perfected that skill in that position. And for me, he played over 100 tests. He had a bit of a break from 2009 to 2013, came back, played a bit against the British and Irish Lions. Just a legend of the game, and for me, deservedly, has to also have a spot on my Mount Rushmore.
Nice,
so he's up there.
Well, he was on mine last week. We talked about him. I think it was the dynamism that pipped it for me in terms of selecting him last week in my 4. Because again, you look at the loosies and just loose and just flank in general. You've got Pocock, you've got Hooper, you've got George Smith. Those 2 other boys, fair play to them. They've got amazing careers in their own right. And actually, David Pocock is someone that, I think I wanted to shine more light on because, again, he was always just someone immense. At the breakdown, hardest person, I think, one of the hardest I've ever seen to shift off the ball once he's over you. And the amount of turnovers, the amount of penalties that he would win just by being that absolute menace. Hard to knock him and or Michael Hooper off. Michael Hooper's engine was just unbelievable. I think Michael Hooper, 125 caps or something in that region.
The youngest centurion ever. The youngest player to ever reach 100 tests.
Yeah, like he just was immense. And for George to be able to pip both of those, it's the complete player that he was. So he had everything that each of them have and a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had to get that out of the way. First
Fair
one,
enough.
I agree with where you ended last week.
Fair enough. Maybe I should have gone and then you just agree. But nonetheless, that's a good pick. And we agree, but in with a bye week in between.
It's okay.
For me, this week, I start off my selection with someone I rate as King, Pieter-Steph du Toit.
Okay.
So for me, Pieter-Steph he's a silent destroyer, like the stoic, relentless machine who has been key, I think, in South Africa's success over, the last 2 World Cups. The engine that and just a quiet, absolute destroyer who just goes about his business day in and day out. And for me, I've said this so many times, he's for me personally would be the first person on my Springbok sheet every single time. Between him and Chesney, we were talking about Colby. We were talking about who should get Player of the Year, and we were back and forth in that earlier in the year. And in one of our episodes, Pieter-Steph he's outstanding in every sense. So he's top of my list this week. He goes in my mount.
Yeah, I think he deserves his own mountain right next to Richie McCaw. He's on my Mount Rushmore as well.
Has to be.
He's my next name on my mountain. What can you say about the man? World Player of the Year twice, double World Cup winner.
Yeah.
Player of the match in the 2023 World Cup final. Made 28 tackles. I think one of the funny stories is. Bowden Barrett asked Geordie, why did he sign for Leinster? Why didn't he just go to Japan and play with him if he wanted to take a sabbatical? And Geordie said, no, mate, Pieter-Steph's in Japan. I'm going to go to Ireland, so it's safer there because, everybody's seen the clips out there. Just the work rate, his work rate. Again, I don't think there's a forward. I know Rassie, he's picked a guy like Kobus Wiese now on the side because he thinks he can potentially replicate what Pieter-Steph does, covers lock, covers blind side. But to fill those boots, you've got to up your work rate, mate, because Huge. That guy, the amount of work that he gets in, and he just doesn't stop. He's like a tractor that just goes and goes and goes and goes.
He's the Energizer Bunny.
He's unbelievable.
And he's also got big game temperament. He stands up. I was watching parts of the second Chasing of the Sun. If you haven't watched that series, go and do yourself a favour. It shines a light on the Springboks in the first in 2019 and also the second series of 2023. And I think Rassie was talking about how it's either the semi-final or the final where he had a word to the boys at halftime going, you're losing this, you need to step up. And apparently they all got together and huddled, and Pieter-Steph, who never speaks, came out with some inspiration. And Rassie was like, Peter never speaks. The moment he spoke, it G'd everyone up.
Yeah.
Because again, he leads by action. And his actions speak volumes for themselves. So if you got someone like that on the field and the team, and that person's running through brick walls, it inspires you to do the same. And I think, as I say, he's led by his actions.
Yeah, we often talk about once in a generation player, right? I personally rate Donnie Gerber. I think he's a once in a generation player. Fourie de Pre, Victor Matfield, these guys. Pieter-Steph is in that class.
100%.
Like Flick de Pre. Those legendary type players, when he retires, people are going to look back and say he was one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest Springbok. I've never heard anyone say anything negative about him. He's not controversial off the field. Like, if you want to know what the poster child for a Springbok is, that's him.
100%.
Always friendly, always humble. But again, he will die for his country on the field, and the work that he puts in, we'll say it a million times, no one even comes close to him.
And he's versatile. He's got good speed. Again, he gets around the park amazingly well for a big lad. and he can play flank, and he can slip in and play second row.
And he covers wing often, right? Our game plan, the famous Tony ball that we're trying to implement, he stands out in the wider channels with Sia often because he's got pace for a big guy and he's got a skill set. So why not use that size to your advantage? But again, I think he won SA Rugby Player of the Year 3 times, won a couple of Currie Cups. Just the list goes on and on in terms of what he's achieved.
He's immense. And he's, as I say, silent assassin, quiet, stoic destroyer. He just goes about his business and he takes no prisoners. So for me, he's my first pick.
Yeah, okay, that's your first pick. Who's second on your Mount Rushmore?
Similar in terms of kind of stature, I think, for his country. He was an ice cold enforcer, but Thierry Dusautoir. Again, some people would say that he's more open side. He played both. I think for me, blind side. Happy to argue the point, but he was known for his calm demeanor. Again, his engine, the way he would get around the park. I think also the amount of tackles he would make in big games. The captaincy when he led France, that particular period, they had some really good opportunities to go and see it through and take a World Cup here and there, but they didn't. But nonetheless, he was immense.
Yeah. No, he's on my mount
as
well.
Really?
Yeah. So I wasn't influenced by what people said in the comments section last week at all because I picked my list 2 weeks ago.
I did too.
And Dusautoir would always been up there. Like if you had to pick one Frenchman, I know I picked Jean-Pierre Rives last week. For me, Dusautoir was more of an open side, but I did have him down as both. I did my research. He has played both sides of the scrum, so it's very easy to say, you can include him as a blind side. I think he was a natural open side because like a David Pocock and a George Smith and a Richie McCaw, he was very good over the ball, stealing the ball, slowing down the opposition's ball when they were in possession. But I think his defense is what stands out.
Unbelievable.
Doesn't matter which side of the scrum he played. I can't remember the stat, but I think it was close to 30 tackles he made in that semi-final, quarter-final in 2007, and likewise in the World Cup final in 2011, both against New Zealand. He made, it was in the high 20s in terms of the amount of tackles he made. So
and they were so close to winning it.
It was, especially in 2011. I think New Zealand were lucky to get away with a win, but deserved it in the end. But he still got chosen as World Player of the Year in a losing side.
He was the architect behind their particular success in that particular time. France were sensational, and he was sensational from the front. He led by, again, his actions, and the boys that he was leading got up and followed him into battle.
Yeah, and France has produced some great flanks. We spoke about Jean-Pierre Rives last week, Olivier Magnier, Laurent Caban, Philippe Benetton, Serge Betson, all these guys. But I think out of all of them, Dusautoir is probably top of the pile. Just an absolute legend of the game.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very good select bunch of boys you just mentioned there. There seem to be some fantastic players coming out of France, coming out of every country really in this position. But for me, he was head and shoulders above all of his compatriots.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great captain as well.
Yeah.
Like he captained that side
exceptionally well.
Famously in 2011, very similar to what happened to South Africa a couple of times in the World Cup. They lost to Tonga in the pool stage, but still made the final and almost won.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just down to him, but he had a big hand in how that team rallied and actually made it to the final and then almost won the thing.
And again, if you're making 20 to 30 tackles in a game, again, those are the actions that your man, 14 other players around you, or however many play on the day, they see that. And if you're the leader of that team and you're leading by that example, your boys inevitably get up and they will, they'll follow you into battle.
No, inspirational guy.
Yeah,
inspirational guy. Absolutely.
But really, robust skill set, good going forward, defensively outstanding. So you had to be on my mount.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Who'd you go third?
Well, my fourth pick, I've already agreed with two of yours, and I went with George Smith. So my last one, again, a guy who sort of could have played both sides of the scrum, but I went with Richard Hill, which a lot of people will say was a blindside because he played next to Neil Back, who was the short, stockier guy who played open side a lot of the time. Again, Richard Hill could play both sides of the scrum, but for me, just an absolute legend. We spoke about him when we picked our England Dream 15. One of the greatest English players of all time. There's a couple, Martin Johnson, David Duckham I quite liked, Rory Underwood I liked, and Richard Hill is one of my probably top 5 English players of all time. Again, great ball carrier, defensively so strong. We talk about defense a lot. It's important for a loose forward. He was good over the ball, probably not as good as back. He had a better running game and defensive game. But likewise, his work rate. And when I first really took notice of him was on that 97 Lions tour.
Yeah.
He was a relative unknown in England. Still, sort of finding his way in the national team. And he went on that tour and he actually, played us off the field. He dominated with Tim Rodber in the loose trio. And I have very fond memories of Richard Hill. World Cup winner. Looks like a good bloke off the field. But just a beast, absolute beast. So I had to get him up there.
Yeah, and he's on my list as well.
Okay.
So before we aired the program here today, I was telling Werner I'd forgotten my lists. And again, we don't share the lists before we debate our selective teams, respective teams. But I was on the way here, and then I realized I've forgotten my list. Turned the car around, went home quickly to copy and paste. And as I'm sitting there, I had another name. I actually had David Pocock in my 4.
Okay. And he would have deserved it.
And I had him in there, and I had Richard Hill as a special mention. Okay. So I've got 2 special mentions. They are this week, David Pocock and Sam Warburton, which we'll get to. I think both of them outstanding, and they were on the cusp of my selection. But when I was looking at it, and I had Pocock there, and Richard Hill was in my honorable mentions, I was like, I got to swap him.
Yeah.
I got to have him in there. And so I did. I literally copied and cut him out. Sorry, David. Put Richard Hill in, and for all the right reasons, for the reasons you just said.
Yeah.
Just again, stoic, silent assassin, quiet, went about his business in the way that he should, and just he's immense.
I like those types of players, guys that don't talk a lot on the field. They lead by action. Pieter-Steph's one of those types of guys as well. They don't talk to the ref. They're humble guys, but geez, they get through a lot of work.
Yeah,
and Richard Hill for me was very similar. Just loved him. Loved to see him play. Again, put in some big tackles. He was a strong ball carrier as well. Made a lot of meters and scored some great tries running on the outside channels in the back line. He was quick. He was quick for a big guy.
Neil Back's an outstanding shout. Like, he was a sensational player in his own right. We actually saw him briefly and gave him a quick shout out. So
he did not have time to talk to us.
He did not have time. All the trains were...
Well, I think if Leicester won, he probably would have had a beer with us. But
but we saw him at the train station, said how's it to him. Anyway, he's a sensational player in his own right when he played, but I just think Richard Hill's the more well-rounded player.
Absolutely. Yeah. Totally. And if we had to pick one guy from England, there's no one else. I mean, there's a couple of honourable mentions which we will get to. I want to hear who the 4th player on your Mount Rushmore is, and then we'll get to some honourable shortlisted players.
So who have you gone so far? You've gone Richard Hill, I've
got Richard Hill, Pieter-Steph, Thierry Dusautoir, and George Smith.
Okay, so those are
my 4th.
So my last pick, and I went backwards and forwards on this, but is a player that I just absolutely loved. He was immense as well. Again, all of these guys have a similar kind of moniker: silent assassin, silent punisher. This is what I would describe Jerome Kaino. So Jerome Kaino was just an immense player. He was so athletic, tall, strong, had ball skills like a basketball player, and I just loved the way that he played. And
I love that you have him up there, because I think a lot of the guys, we've got a pretty decent following in New Zealand. A lot of guys would say you have to have him up there.
Yeah.
I didn't. I couldn't find space for him. But geez, what a monster. Just an absolute beast of a player.
Yeah.
Such a legend.
81 caps, 12 tries, 2 Rugby World Cups, obviously 2011, 15. He was Super Rugby champion a couple of times with the Blues, Rugby Championship winner, IRB Team of the Year in 2011. Like, he was immense. And you think about the people in and around that time. I think if you look at one of the honorable mentions I wanted to kind of talk to was Jerry Collins. Jerry Collins was sensational in that position, and if I'm right in saying, I think Jerome Kaino took that position
pretty
from
much.
him.
I mean, their careers did overlap
a little.
I think Kaino made his debut in 05, and Collins played his last test in 07, maybe 08. But yeah, he was the natural successor to Jerry.
The hitman from Porirua. He was just feared for his raw aggression. He was bone crunching. 48 caps, Tri-Nations champion. I think, wasn't Jerry Collins All Blacks captain in 2006 once or twice?
Possibly.
Yeah. But like an immense player. And Jerry Collins sadly passed away too young. But in New Zealand, Jerry Collins is absolutely loved and lauded as an absolute champion. For Jerome Kaino to come and take that position from him,
and do it justice and fill those boots.
And do it justice.
Yeah, full
like for me, I love the way he played. He just, and again, silent assassin, just went about his business, had a smile on his face. I think you can when you're that big, that strong. Really good at the dark arts, scrappy, getting in there. But you would find him, similar how we spoke about Pieter-Steph, you'd find Jerome Kaino out in the wing every now and again, and he was quick, he was athletic.
Mate, who will ever forget that try scored against us in the 2015 World Cup semi-final? I mean, that pretty much broke us. South Africa were leading for a large part, but he scored early. That sort of set the tone, and they squeaked it. And again, he scored in the corner like a winger, and we couldn't get him into touch. Fantastic player, strong ball carrier, amazing with ball in hand. So strong, hard as
nails, bro.
Brick shithouse.
Mate, this boy, and again, you wouldn't want to find him in a dark alley. Like,
no. Well, if he's my mate and we're causing shit, maybe. Yeah.
Well, you're on my Mount Rushmore, so I don't expect any aggression. But again, he was the epitome, I think, of what a genuine rugby player. Never had any sort of bad press, I think.
No. Just
a good bloke.
Yeah.
Just a good bloke and outstanding in his position.
Absolutely. No, I love it. I love having him up there. Okay, so those are our final lists. I mean, just some honorable mentions that I quickly want to run through, Matt. I'm sure you've got your list as well. I think I mentioned him last week, but Simon Poitevin in the 80s.
You did,
just an awesome player for Australia. Again, could play both sides of the scrum. Rocky Elsom was one.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, he's in the news now for the wrong reasons, but not only could he steal balls, he could steal some money as well. But okay, we won't go down that route. Neil Back, we spoke about. Mike Teague here in England was a great player. Jean-Claude Scrella, there's a name from the 60s and 70s who played for France. Such a fantastic player, beast of a player. Manya, we spoke about. Fergus Slattery, I think a lot of people will also give a shout to. Irish legend, one of the hardest players ever. Peter O'Mahony, recently retired. I think he deserves a mention at least because he's such a servant of the game and again hard as nails. Stephen Ferris, I spoke about him before. He made my all-time Irish team.
And in Ireland, Stephen Ferris is absolutely
he's an absolute
loved.
Legend.
Yeah.
One of the hardest flankers ever, and his career was cut short again by injury. He should have played like 100 tests. Michael Leach, who played for Japan. I mean, Japan famously beat South Africa, and they had a good run in 2019.
And I think he was captain for that.
And he was captain, and he was a great player even for the Chiefs when he played for them.
For the Chiefs, exactly.
I had Jerry Collins highlighted here in yellow because he was so close to my top 8 list on either side of the scrum. But as a blind side, again, just immovable. Kirky, Ian Kirkpatrick. I think a lot of guys who know their rugby from again the 60s and the early 70s will definitely agree. I think there's a lot of folks that will say he deserves to be on Mount Rushmore, together with Colin Meads, Frick de Pre, Willie John McBride, that sort of generation of players.
Yeah.
Kirky was up there, mate, and famously he was manager of the New Zealand Cavaliers in 1986. He's one of those proper rugby men who just didn't care about politics. He just wanted to play against the best, and he made himself available to go and manage that tour. I think is one of the greatest All Blacks of all time. Scored a beautiful try against the Lions in 71. I'm rambling. I need to move on. Cal Tremaine, another All Black that I think is worth a mention. Then there was the blonde killer on the side of the Scottish scrum, John Jeffrey. I think a lot of folks here in Scotland will remember John Jeffrey and appreciate him being up there. Andre Venter for the Springboks, mate. What a legend. One of the strongest ball carriers, together with Jean Smith, both from the Cheetahs.
So my special mentions for South Africa were Jean Smith, Quagga Smith as well.
Yeah, Quagga. Absolutely legend.
Andre Venter and Willem Alberts. I know
Willem Alberts, yeah.
Willem played 8th man a lot, but he also played on the blind side.
The bone collector.
For New Zealand, I said Jerry Collins was very close for me. For France, Emmanuel Harry Nordiqui. I know he was more an 8th man, but he did play 6th, I think, once or
every
twice.
now and again, yeah.
Australian, Owen Finnegan, Matt Cobain, Scott Fardy. Scott Fardy also played a bit like Pieter-Steph, he played lock as well.
Yeah.
I think.
I think Finnegan's a good shot there.
He's
such an underrated player.
I think Owen Finnegan was, if I remember back to my pro era team, I included him in my. I loved the way that
bench,
he would from those breaks, him and George Gregan, the pass behind the back, and he would go through. Finnegan, watching some of his reels, he breaks away, he's in the 22, and even the commentator says, "Go for the line, man."
That was the World Cup final in '99, man.
Yeah, and he makes it, and he gets there.
Yeah, it was a great try.
England, we talked about Neil Back, Tom Curry as well.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Yeah.
He is a good player.
Joe Worsley came up. Peter O'Mahony for me in Ireland. Sean O'Brien as well. He played both 6 and 7. You mentioned Pablo Montero for Argentina.
Yeah.
I think he was more 6, and he plays 8 as well. And Dan Lydiot for Wales.
Yeah. I had Lydiot as well, and Justin Tipuric, who's more of an open side. But I don't think we mentioned him last week, so I did want to mention him this week.
We didn't. Tipuric was on my list last week, as was Martin Williams. We didn't make mention of Martin. I love Martin Williams. Just the most amazing player, and he was just pipped by the other 4 that I thought were better from an open side. But Martin Williams, I've always held in really high esteem.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 2 other guys. I mean, we did talk about Heinrich Brousseau last week again.
We did.
He's more of a natural open side, but I wanted to mention him again because he's someone that, in my mind, should have played 100 tests. Heineke Meyer killed his career. Never picked him. I still don't know why, because he was a strong ball carrier and so amazing over the ball. And then there's another guy from the 70s and 80s, which I think is worth a mention, Tiaan Stoffberg, ex-Springbok captain. Big, tall, rangy runner, scored some beautiful tries for the Springboks, but again, just an inspirational leader and someone, that led from the front, very much like a Pieter-Steph. Quiet on the field, led by example. I thought he was great.
But those 2 that you mentioned as well, Johan Smith and Andre Venter, same kind of, cut from the same cloth.
Both from the Cheetahs.
But so Cheetahs have produced some amazing
They
players.
have. Yeah, they have.
But just quiet, stoic, went about their business, cracked on, got on with it. Johan Smith, 70 caps. And then Andre Venter, 66 caps. I mean, just like outstanding.
Legends.
Yeah, legends of the game, and fair play. Unfortunately, I think Pieter-Steph just pips him.
No, he's the GOAT for us. For us, at least. He's the greatest blindside that's ever played for South Africa. So I'm happy to have him up there, Matt. This has been fun. We've covered the loose forward. Tell us what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Give us a like and a subscribe. Click the little notification button to get notified of all our new videos every single week. Go and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We're on all the social medias. Show us your love. Give us your feedback in the comment section below. We'll do this again next week. We're going to go into lock. We'll decide. We'll discuss it offline and see, do we do 4 and 5, or do we do a mishmash like we did with loose forward?
It's the same. It's the same thing. Yeah, you have so many locks that one lock will interchange with another. So we'll do our best, I think, to keep it to 5 and 4. But if we let
We'll pick 8 and do 2 videos. Essentially, that's where it's going to come down to.
If one slips through the net, then I'm sure someone's going to have a yarn and a chirp, and we'll welcome that. So
that's okay too. Okay, so tune again next week. We'll see you next week, Tuesday. Cheers,
nice
man.
one.
It was fun. Cheers, buddy.